Benjamin, in addition to traveling around the world, telling people about the reappearance of the Christ and the Masters, you have also been telling them that they can do something about it and have a part in it, something you call transmission meditation.
That's right.
I'd like to ask you something about transmission meditation. First of all, what is it?
It's a form of meditation which is at the same time a field of service. Millions of people around the world today are coming into a closer alignment with their own souls, and this immediately makes them want to serve. And people may not know how to serve, they may not have a field, they're looking simply, kind of finding some kind of way which they could be more useful to the world. If they serve, fine, but they don't always find that way. Transmission meditation is a method where you can work directly with the masters of the spiritual hierarchy under the Christ and take a part in this great return to the world of these men.
By way of background, these are the masters as foretold by H.P. Blavatsky through the Theosophical Society and her writings. The masters in the hierarchy, you are now saying, are present in some numbers in the world, along with the Christ. Before we get too much deeper into transmission meditation in particular, I'd like to be a little broader about the subject first. A lot of people out there, I'm sure, know about meditation of various forms. For the past 20 or 30 years, there's been a big boom in meditation of all varieties in the West. What is the purpose of meditation in general, if we look at all the different forms?
The basic purpose of meditation is to allow the person, man or woman, to come into contact with and eventually at one with their own soul. And there are hundreds of meditations, as you know. There are more or less scientific ways of doing this. And as you come into contact with your soul, the immediate response of the personality is to find some form of service to the world, because the nature of the soul is to serve. That's why it comes into incarnation at all. And so as soon as you're touched by the energy of the soul, you want to serve. Meditation, therefore, is the age-old way, the royal road to this kind of alignment with the soul. Transmission meditation shifts the focus somewhat, and you move away from simple alignment with contact with your own soul to a cooperative, active alignment with the kingdom of souls, which is the spiritual hierarchy of masters.
How does it compare in practice, say, with better known forms where people use mantras, they sound an om? How does it operate? Is it comparative in any way?
Well, the masters, you see, are the custodians of all energies entering this planet, from cosmic levels, other planetary levels, from the planet itself, and they manipulate these. They send them into the world in very scientific ways so that they can bring about the evolution of humanity and the other kingdoms. There's a great plan behind the evolution of any particular planet, and all the kingdoms are part of this plan. Their evolution is overseen by a hierarchy of masters in each planet. On our planet, the masters have been esoteric, hidden away for thousands and thousands of years, and they're now beginning to come back into the everyday world. And as part of this process, groups, because we're now beginning to work as groups for the first time, groups have been given this opportunity to work with the hierarchy in such a way that the energies, cosmic and planetary, can be stepped down, transformed, and therefore made more usable, more accessible to humanity. If these energies were simply sent into the world by the masters, for the most part they would be too high. They would bounce off the mass of people, not be absorbed and used. So transmission groups are used as kind of substations, connected to hierarchy, doing the work of hierarchy, but as a substation. The energies are transmitted through the chakras, the force centers in the spine of the individuals in the group, and they're automatically transformed and become available in that way.
We are speaking with Benjamin Creme, who is the author of Transmission, Meditation for the New Age. Let's go back just a moment in unfolding the history of this. When did transmission meditation start?
Well, transmission meditation is given to the world through my master, with whom I've been in touch for very many years, since 1959. And in 1974, he asked me to form a group in London, where I live. And he introduced there to that group the idea of transmission meditation. I was asked to give a little talk about meditation and to give them the feel of a transmission meditation, which is a specific type of meditation. You do a meditation, you use a certain chakra, the ajna chakra between the eyebrows, to focus on, and as necessary you use the mantra Om, to bring the attention back to that chakra when it wanders off, as of course inevitably it does. Mm-hmm. You don't meditate on Om, you simply use it to bring it back. And the master gave about 15 minutes transmission to the group involved and said, well, that's what it's like. Those who wish to continue can continue from now on. A group was formed in March 1974 in London and has been going ever since. We meet 3 times a week and have done all these years. And now there are hundreds of transmissions groups all over the world doing this work. It is a means of serving the planet in a very simple way. It's for lazy people, you know, who don't like to do too hard work in their service, because you're just sitting there, the masters do all the work, they send the energy through you, and they direct the energy to wherever it is needed in the world. So all you have to do is to be there, to decide to be a group, 3 people make a group, and you carry on from there. The group uses the Great Invocation, which was given by the Christ to the world in June 1945, as a means of linking with hierarchy. It sets up a conduit, and through that conduit the energies are sent. And that's all the group does.
Meditation, I know from what you've said and what I've read elsewhere, has been around for centuries. Was there any precursor to transmission meditation that did it just spring into existence as part of this group work?
No, it is because people are now really consciously working in a group formation that transmission meditation becomes possible, because it is a group meditation. But it develops out of the triangles movement, which was already given to the world by the Tibetan master Jalkul through Alice A. Bailey. The Alice A. Bailey books are known throughout the world, and he introduced triangles, as it's called, which is a mental linking up with 2 other individuals anywhere in the world, in which these 3 individuals elect to say aloud the Great Invocation, which was given in 1945, and in such a way that the energies are then sent through that triangle formed to 3 friends in the world. And then they link that triangle up with all the triangles thus active in the world. And that's a mental exercise. Transmission meditation takes that principle, but makes it enormously more potent, because the groups are working on a larger scale. I mean, sometimes I have 500 people in a transmission group, as happened in Japan. That's unusual. But most groups are around 10, 12, 15, 20 people.
Let's go back and talk more about a few specifics that you just laid out, because I'm sure a number of people watching may need to know more about them. Number one, you mentioned chakras, and in the Ajna Center in particular. Just give us a little background about chakras and what they mean to meditation.
Well, behind this solid physical body that we're all uncomfortably at times aware of, is another body, the etheric body, of which this is simply a precipitation. And in the etheric body there are various vortices. There are 7 major vortices up the spine. And through these vortices are chakras, or centers. All the energies entering our system go in and out of these chakras. We're living really in an ocean of etheric energy. And our etheric body is simply a more condensed part of that ocean of energy.
Is etheric energy, is that like what people see in Kirlian photographs of auras around
Indeed.
Hands? I know it's not just the aura.
It's not just that, but the aura itself is made up of all the energies from the soul, the mental and the astral, and the etheric levels of our being. And these all interact with each other in the aura. But all of that is going in and out of these 7 major and very many minor chakras or centers. These are the basic organizing organs of energy distribution in the physical body. Each of these chakras or centers is connected with one of the major endocrine glands, and the endocrine system receives its energy and its balance functioning from the balanced functioning of the chakras in the etheric body.
So what's the reason for focusing in the Ajna Center during transmission?
The Ajna Center is the directive center and eventually becomes the synthesizer of all the energies below it, from the base chakra up to this point here. And it's safe for people to use that center to meditate on. So they turn their attention to it, hold it there, and as it wanders off and they notice it has done, they think, not aloud, but think Om, and it automatically comes back to that. That forms an alignment, you see, between the physical brain and the soul. And the energies are really being sent from the soul level. In fact, to be specific, the Buddhic level. It's the second level of the spiritual triad.
That's
in
above
soul.
the mental level.
Above the mental level, yeah.
Is the Ajna center generally a good place to put attention for any kind of meditation?
Indeed, this brings about, gradually, brings about mental polarization. Most people are astrally polarized. They're working.
You mentioned also that during transmission you sound the Om. Can you tell us a little bit about the Om? I know when meditation first was introduced and had its big boom in America in the 60s, people were sounding Oms all over the place. You say there's a particular way of sounding it, that it has certain effects and certain uses. Can you talk about that?
Om is really a combination of A-U-M, and A-U-M, if correctly sounded, with focus, that is a mental focus, stimulates the chakras. The A stimulates the chakra at the base of the spine, the U stimulates the chakra in the heart, and the M stimulates this chakra here. So these three resound at the same time. Now, you don't bother about the base of the spine in this type.
What about the actual functioning in a transmission group? What actually happens when people turn their attention, begin the Om? What happens in terms of the group itself in its interaction with the hierarchy?
When they sound the great invocation, which they do aloud with a focused attention and intention, because the will has to be brought into play, and that is done through the Ajna center. They put their attention on the Ajna center, say aloud the great invocation, that automatically invokes the energy from the hierarchy. That's why it was given. And through the conduit form, it's like telepathic conduit, which is set up through the enunciation of what is in fact a great mantra. The energy is sent through there, and then the masters are looking at that group, which is arranged to be in a certain place at a certain time regularly, whatever it is, Monday and Tuesday, or Monday and Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, or wherever they decide to be. Then the masters know that at that time, in that place, will be a group of people of 3 and upwards who are ready to have these energies transmitted through them. The masters see them as they look through this chakra here. They see
their own chakras.
Their own Ajna center. They see into the world, and they see that group there. And then they...
How do they see that group?
They see them as a kind of extension of their vision. They see them as light, they see the chakras, they see the radiance of the chakras, and they can evaluate precisely the point in evolution of each individual by that radiance or lack of radiance. And through each person's chakra then, a potency of the various energies which they wish to distribute is put, exactly conforming to the point of evolution of each individual.
Now,
highly scientific.
Now the masters know to attune to them because the great invocation is like a buzzer that goes off.
Yes, it's like ringing a bell, yeah. There's a group down there.
And they start to transmit, the masters tune in,
yes, exactly.
and they make these adjustments, you say, based on where each of the people are.
So no one receives a higher potency of any particular energy than their chakras can stand. But at the same time, it's an ongoing process, so the vibration is lifted and lifted all the time, and so it is impossible, you see, to do this work, to have these great spiritual energies poured through the chakras in this highly scientific way, because these are master scientists, without the chakras being transformed. And they measure your evolutionary journey by the state of play of your chakras. How brilliant, how fast they're moving, how intense the light, and so on. And so you're entering a hothouse. It's a forcing process. In doing transmission meditation, you're performing a service, but at the same time you're serving yourself more easily, more potently than you could possibly do. So much so that in 1 year of properly conducted, intensely carried out transmission meditation, you make the same kind of spiritual advance as in, well, I don't know, 10, 15 years of ordinary meditation.
When the masters, you say they send energies through the force centers of the individuals, What kinds of energies are these? Are they from the masters themselves, from a plane or a group? What exactly are they?
Some of them are cosmic. They come from all sorts of cosmic levels. They are stepped down by the Christ, the Lord Maitreya. They go from him to certain masters who step them down further, and then they go to the transmission groups around the world. These are energies of love, equilibrium, organization, power, dynamic power, which will galvanize humanity out of its sloth, its inertia, and so on. It's quite extraordinary, but it all works through it.
What is there about this particular time in history that makes this all work?
Oh, the fact that the Christ has returned to the world and that a very large group of his disciples, the masters, who have been in the mountain and deserts of the world for thousands of years, are themselves returning to the world. Now, this brings them in a much closer relationship to humanity. And so the disciples of the world, because
You mentioned before that this is a transformational process, like an electrical transformer that steps down current.
yes,
tantamount to saying
it
it's stepping
happens
down
to be
current.
spiritual current, but it's current,
Yeah.
yes.
Why is that necessary? And I ask that not only in terms of the relationship of hierarchy to humanity, but all the other forms of life.
Well, if you handle 250 volts of electricity, it would kill you. If you use a transformer, you can bring it down to, 5-volt little battery and use it perfectly safely. It's the same electricity, but brought down in potency to a safe point. Transmission meditation group is such a kind of transformer. And these great spiritual energies are stepped down to a level where they can actually be used, utilized, absorbed by humanity. Now, humanity is passing them on down through all the kingdoms. The hierarchy is the spiritual kingdom, and we evolve through the downflow of the energy, spiritual energy from hierarchy, and so the human kingdom evolves. From the human kingdom, these energies are passed down to the animal kingdom, from the animal to the vegetable, from the vegetable to the mineral kingdom. So in this process, all of these kingdoms are evolving in response to the spiritual, because that's what it is, impact of these energies from above. And each kingdom grows out of the kingdom below and grows into, by this process, the kingdom above.
And then
at the edge is a radiatory
Oh.
activity, and the shift is through radiation. This increases the radiation of humanity to a point where humanity has been lifted, and great events take place in the world, like the transformation of our political structures, economic, religious, social structures, and at the same time, the groups involved in it are moving out of the strictly human kingdom into the spiritual kingdom, which is the spiritual hierarchy of masters. They're becoming disciples, initiates, eventually masters.
Are there any people who should not do transmission meditation?
Yes, anybody under 12. From 12 to 1200 you can do transmission meditation perfectly safely, unless you are rather unbalanced. If you are physically very ill, it might do you harm, but it could just as equally do you good, because many people receive healing during a transmission meditation. This is a well-known fact. Many people record extraordinary healing process going on during the transmission. But someone who is mentally unbalanced, they should not take part in transmission meditation. They may become just overexcited, the chakras get overstimulated, and it just makes their condition worse. So anybody who is emotionally, under par, unbalanced, should not take part.
Are transmission energies, by their nature, healing, or are healing energies of a different category?
Both.
They're both.
Sometimes just simply the outflow of the spiritual energies have such a transformative effect on the individuals taking part in it that they come into correct alignment with themselves, and the healing process is, as a result of that. In other cases, specifically healing energies are sent at the same time to individuals by certain masters. I know my master does this all the time, and these produce the healing process on the physical plane.
I know that in my own experience and those of people I've talked to, sometimes we feel that in any form of meditation, transmission or otherwise, if our minds are very busy with thoughts, we think we're not meditating or transmitting. Is that true?
No. The function of the lower mind, because that's what you're talking about, this mind that's thinking is the lower mind, its function is to think. That's how we measure things. That's how we can make our technology and know to wait for the bus to pass before we walk across the road and so on. All of that thought process is the natural function of the lower mind. And you just leave that alone. You don't try to still it, you don't try to control it. You simply place the attention at the ajna center and you get above its level. It goes on, but you're linked now with the soul, which is beyond thought. You're really going to a point beyond thought. And in that state, the alignment between the brain and the soul takes place, and the transmission flows from that level. That's why it is essential to hold the attention at the ajna center, and not, for instance, let it fall down to the solar plexus. And when it does fall down to the solar plexus, there is a danger of negativity, of mediumship. Now, many people who come into this more esoteric field come from the spiritualistic movements. And they think, in some cases, that this is the same, that a seance is a transmission meditation is a seance. They're absolutely poles apart and should not be confused. And people in that situation are inclined to think that they're getting messages, you know, wonderful teachings coming from the masters or the guides or whomever. Nothing of that kind ever happens in transmission meditation. If people think that it is happening, then they're not doing transmission meditation and they'll be better out of it. They've got some kind of emotional focus, solar plexus focus, they're mediumistic, and they're either giving it to themselves because they want to, or they're in touch with some level of the astral plane and getting it from that level. But nothing like that happens in true transmission meditation. No message is ever sent, no guidance given.
Let me ask you one final question. And that question is, it sounds as though all of this is part of a great plan and that there's real purpose behind it. How long does one have to do this for, and what kind of effects will that have?
Well, the longer you do it, the more effect it will have, and it's a transformative. It will take you to the door of initiation and beyond, and it will last you as a field of service, simple, easy, just by giving up a few hours of your time a week, to the end of this life, and the life after that, and on into infinity. All of the masters are doing transmission meditation at some level, and so is everybody higher than the masters, evolved way up into the cosmos itself. We're living in an energetic universe, and the transference of energy from above to below through some chakras is the nature of our cosmos.